Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is Dr. Halimah. I hope you found my previous lectures clear and simple. And today's lecture, the title of today's lecture is What is a Translator? As a title, it's quite interesting, but as you might have realized from previous lecture, this subject is a bit dry. So we hope that you will find it interesting. Now, in this lecture, what we are going to do, as usual, I will go through the learning outcomes. And then we will go through the following major points, which will tell us something about a translator. Now, point number one, communication versus translation. And then we will find out about the difference between a normal communicator and a translator. Then we will talk about the importance of memory, meaning and language to the translator. And then we will see how the translator moves from one language into another in the course of translation. And then hopefully we will find out about the translator knowledge. What does it contain? And then we will talk about the communicative competence of the translator. What does it consist of? And last but not least, we will finish off this lecture by mentioning the main characteristics of a good translator. Now, by the end of this lecture, you should be able to differentiate between a normal communicator and a translator. Not only that, you should be able to have some knowledge of the translator's types of knowledge and skills. And you should be able to make your own list of the qualities necessary for a good translator. So when you have finished reading this lecture, or watching this lecture, or listening to this lecture, try to ask yourself, have I achieved the learning outcomes of this lecture? If you have not, then you need to repeat it. Point number one, communication versus translation. There is a lot of similarity between communication and translation. Now, all communicators are translators. Why? Because they receive signals in speech and in writing containing messages encoded in a communication system which is not identical with their own. All communicators tend to face the same problems as those of translators, because they need to read the text, make sense of the text, they need to deconstruct it and then reconstruct it. Therefore, we can say that any model of communication is a model of translation. In other words, I will put it to you very simply. Now, you and me, not as a translator, as a normal communicator. You talk to me, I receive the message from you, I encode it, I understand it, and I reply to you. This is a normal communicator. And the same thing, translator, receive a message, encode it, and then we will see the difference between a communicator and the translator. But the similarities are the same. But the communicator might find the same difficulty as the translator find it when there is a kind of communication between two people. So there is some kind of common features between communication, a model of communication, and a model of translation. Now, this point I'm going to talk about will tell us the difference between a normal communicator and a translator. A normal communicator, it means a monolingual. A monolingual, it means that a person who does not know another language. This is what a monolingual means. Now, as you can see, the only difference, or the differences between a normal communicator and a translator are as follows. A monolingual encode into the language used by the sender. It means somebody is talking to you, you need to use the same language the sender is using. Notice, the translator's encoding consists of re-encoding into a different language. It's very different. He has to use a different language when he encodes his message. Now, B, the normal communicator or the monolingual encodes messages which are different from those received, whereas the translator concerns the same message as was received. Now, when you receive a message from a sender, you encode it, but very different from the sender, whereas the translator, he has to concern himself with the same message. He cannot change the message. Number 3, or number C, the monolingual transmits this message to the previous sender, the same sender. You are talking to me, I need to transmit the same message to you, not to somebody else. Whereas the translator, he has to aim at a different group of receivers who are not the same as the original sender. In other words, you ask me, you send me a message, I am a translator, but I don't have to send you the same message to you. I have to send it the same message to another person who speaks a different language. Let's say you send me a message in Arabic, I have to transmit it into English into another person who speaks English. This is very important. Now, the major difference which makes the translator different from the monolingual communicator is that it is the re-encoding process, which marks the bilingual translator off from the monolingual communicator. It is re-encoding. In other words, means to put the message in a different language, in a different code, to another person or another group of receivers. So this is the main difference between a monolingual and a bilingual, or a translator, or a multilingual. Now, how important are memory, meaning, and language to the translator? Like all other communicators, you as a monolingual, for instance, or me as a monolingual, I need memory, I need language, I need meanings. The same, a translator needs, but more probably than a monolingual, a translator needs excellent memory to enable them, or to enable him to use the semantic knowledge and the syntactic knowledge and the rhetorical knowledge of two different languages and two different cultures. Now, as a translator, you need a very powerful memory. Why? Because you will be using the syntax, the semantics, the rhetoric of two different languages. Not only that, two different cultures. So memory, what is memory? Memory contains records of past experiences and which has plans for action on the basis of what we know and what we have done. Now, the language, much of our experience of the external world, of the senses, and the inner world of the mind is mediated by language. In other words, language is the medium. It's very important. So, as far as memory and meaning and language are concerned, the translators must be good at what? At storing experiences in memory and at retrieving those experiences whenever needed to solve complex translation problems. In other words, if you want to become a translator, and a very good translator, you really need to have an excellent memory. Why? Because you need to store experiences, and you need to retrieve. It means to call back these experiences when you have any problems in translation. So this is very important. Now, if we want to know how a translator moves from one language to another in the course of translation, it's different from a monolingual. A monolingual, you can see that we have 9 steps a translator has to follow when he moves from one language into another. Number 1, the translator receives signal 1 containing the message. When he receives it, he recognizes the code. And then he decodes signal 1. It means he tries to deconstruct it, to understand it. Then retrieves message, then comprehend message. Comprehend message means to understand it. The first five steps are done or followed by any normal communicator. Now the last 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 makes the translator different from the normal communicator. What the translators do, he selects code 2. In other words, he selects the code of the language number 2. If he is receiving a message or a code 1 from Arabic, then he has to select code 2 in English. Then what he needs to do, he needs to encode the message by means of code 2. He has to make the message in code 2. In other words, he has to do it in English. Now, to select the channel, is it spoken or written? Now then, what happens? He transmits the signal 2 containing the message. He transmits the message to the other receivers of the message. So these are the steps the translator goes through when he moves from one language into another in the course of translation. Now, if you ask me, what does the translator knowledge base contain? What kind of knowledge does the translator have to have in his mind? It's a very good question. Now, the translator, or a professional translator, has access to 5 distinct kinds of knowledge. He has to have knowledge of the target language. Let's say Arabic, you want to translate from Arabic into English, then he has to have knowledge of English. Target language knowledge. So from Arabic is the source English is the target language. It means you want to translate from Arabic into English, you have to have knowledge of the target language. It means English. Now, the text type knowledge, the text type, what kind of text is it? Is it literary or technical or legal? So you need to have knowledge of the type of text. Then you have to know the source language knowledge. In other words, you are an Arab, then in this case you have to have knowledge of the Arabic language, the source language knowledge. If you want to translate from Arabic into English, and Arabic is the source language and English is the target language. Not only that, the translator has to have some knowledge about the subject matter. What is you are talking about? Okay, it is literary text, but is it poetry? Is it novel? Is it the drama? Or if you are translating, for instance, religious text, is it about the Prophet's life, or is it about fiqh, or about what? You need to know some knowledge of this subject matter. Then last, you have to have general contrastive knowledge. Contrastive knowledge means a knowledge of both languages. So these are the type, a knowledge of English and a knowledge of Arabic. Contrastive knowledge. Knowledge from Arabic, knowledge from English, and comparative knowledge or contrastive knowledge. Now, these are the types of knowledge that the translator has to have. In addition to the access to such types of knowledge, now the translator has to have a communicative competence. The communicative competence should consist of what? Of the following components. Very important point. This one is, okay, I have knowledge to this and to that, but the communicative competence is very important. Now, what do we mean by communicative competence? The communicative competence consists of the following components. Grammatical competence. A grammatical competence means knowledge of the rules of the code. It means if you want to translate from Arabic into English, you need to know the grammatical competence, or your grammatical competence should contain knowledge of the rules of that language, English and Arabic. In other words, vocabulary, word formation, pronunciation, grammar, and sentence structure and spelling. All these comes under grammatical competence. Now, in addition to grammatical competence, you need to have sociolinguistic competence. Means knowledge of an ability to produce and understand utterances appropriately in context. You have to understand the context of the utterance or the context of the message. This is a sociolinguistic aspect of your competence. Now, a third one, discourse competence. Discourse competence, the ability to combine form and meaning to achieve a unified spoken or written text in different genres. In other words, you need to have this competence of knowing what kind of genre and the text, the discourse in the text, whether it is spoken or written, and how it is, whether it is cohesive or coherent, the relationship between the structures in the text, and or the link between the sentences and the paragraphs, and so on and so forth. So you need to have this discourse competence. The strategic competence is the mastery of communication strategies which may be used to improve communication or to compensate for breakdowns in actual communication. This is very individualistic, so everybody has his own ways of tackling communication, especially when there is a breakdown in communication, whether it is in reading or writing. So these are the translator's communicative competencies you need to be aware of when you are doing any types of translation. Now, this is a very important point which everybody would like to have, or to be characterized by, or to be called he is or she is a good translator. Now, what are the main characteristics of a good translator? As you will find out during the course of this course, you know, so many features for a good translator, so many characteristics, and you will formulate your own concept of the main characteristics of a good translator. How? By reading materials about translation and translators, by practicing translation and translators. But what I have done, I have mentioned a few characteristics of a good translator. If we go through them together, you will have some idea what is expected of you as a good translator. Now, a good translator should think and talk about translation from inside the process. He should know how it is done. He should possess a practical, real-world sense of the problems involved. Reliability. The translator has to be really reliable. In other words, he acts in reliable ways, delivering reliable translation by deadlines. In other words, when you open your company of translation, you need really, if you say to a client or a user of a text, come tomorrow to get your text translated, it means you have to live up to his expectations. So you need to be reliable. This is very important. Timeliness. He should be timely in the sense of not getting the translation arrive past the time of its usefulness or value. Time is important. Now, if I say to you, please, I need my translation, for instance, by the end of this week, because on Saturday I have a meeting, I need to discuss this text or this matter, and you give it to me after 2 weeks, then the translation becomes useless. So you need to be, you know, you need to have this timeliness in your mind. Ethics are very important for a translator. He should be ethical. In other words, he should have some morals. In other words, it is unethical for the translator to distort the meaning of the source. It is unethical, it is not moral to change the meaning of some translation, or to distort it, to damage it, just to serve your own purpose. So you have to be really trustworthy for any translation given to you to do. Speed. Again, speed is very important for a translator, but speed depends on the following factors. You've got the typing speed, the level of text difficulty, personal preferences or style, job stress, general mental states. All these factors play a role in the speed of the translator. We don't want to, it depends, you know, sometimes the translator can speed up, sometimes he's supposed to slow down. So you need to weigh it up according to the task given to you. But the following factors affect the speed of the translator. Now the memory. The memory again is one of the best characteristics of a good translator. A translator must be good at storing experiences in memory and retrieving those experiences whenever needed to solve complex translation problems. A professional pride, again the translator should have a professional integrity, a professional self-esteem in what he or she does. He should feel that the job he is doing is important and people appreciate his work. You need to be proud of being a translator. This is a nutshell. You have to be proud of what you do and feel that people appreciate your work so that you enjoy it and you become professional in your job. Now, the last characteristics of a translator, of a good translator, is really written by Peter in Newmark, and I like this characteristic very much because it summarizes the whole thing. A translator can write plainly, economically, gracefully, elegantly, in a repertoire of registers, factual as well as emotional, popular as well as technical, official as well as slang. This summarizes the characteristic of a good translator. Thank you very much.